What if Goku had Gohan's explosive potential from the very beginning? Not just raw power, but that terrifying ability to surge beyond all limits when it matters most. This isn't your typical power fantasy. It's about a warrior who discovers that unlimited potential might be the most dangerous gift of all. Every surge risks destroying everything he's trying to protect. Every spike in power forces him to question whether he's becoming the hero or the monster. I've spent months crafting something that explores the burden of boundless strength. What happens when getting stronger isn't the answer, but learning restraint is. This is Goku's journey from uncontrolled chaos to disciplined protector, alongside a Vegeta who must choose between pride and wisdom. It's a story about teamwork over individual power, strategy over brute force, and the hardest lesson any fighter can learn, knowing when not to use your strength. If that sounds like something you'd want to experience, hit that subscribe button and let's explore what true power really means. The morning sun cast long shadows across Mount Paozu as Goku chopped firewood behind his modest home. His movements were precise, economical, each swing of the axe guided by years of martial arts discipline rather than brute force. At 24, he had found a peaceful rhythm in this simple life with Chi-Chi and 4-year-old Gohan. "Goku, breakfast," Chi-Chi's voice carried from the kitchen window. "Coming." He set down the axe, wiping sweat from his brow. The familiar contentment of family life filled him as he headed toward the house. The contentment shattered as something crashed into the clearing like a meteor. Dust and debris exploded outward as a figure emerged from the crater, tall, wild-haired, clad in strange armor. A device over his left eye beeped steadily as it analyzed everything in sight. "So this is Earth," the stranger said, his voice carrying casual arrogance. "Pathetic, and you?" He looked directly at Goku. "You must be Kakarot." "Kakarot?" Goku stepped protectively in front of his home. "My name's Goku. Who are you?" The stranger's face twisted in disgust. "You don't even remember your Saiyan name." "I am Raditz, your brother." The words hit Goku like a physical blow. "Brother, that's impossible. I don't have any." 800. Raditz's scouter beeped, displaying Goku's power level. "Pathetic even for a low-class warrior. Though I suppose growing up on this soft planet explains your weakness." Something deep inside Goku stirred at the casual dismissal, not anger, but a strange, electric awareness he'd never felt before. The sensation was subtle, like the moment before lightning strikes. "You're lying," Goku said quietly. "I would remember having a brother," Raditz laughed. "Head trauma tends to affect memory, little brother. You were sent here as an infant to destroy this planet's inhabitants. Instead, you became their protector. How disappointing." The electric feeling intensified. Goku's ki began to shift without his conscious direction, responding to something primal and protective. He didn't notice his power level starting to climb. "I won't let you hurt anyone," Goku said, falling into a fighting stance. With a power level of 800, Raditz's scouter continued its steady beeping. "You're dreaming, Kakarot. Observe true Saiyan strength." Raditz moved faster than Goku had ever seen anyone move. The first blow caught him in the stomach, doubling him over. The second sent him flying into a boulder, which cracked on impact. "Daddy!" Gohan's voice cried from behind them. Goku's head snapped up. His son stood at the edge of the clearing, having run toward the sound of the crash with a child's curiosity about danger. The electric feeling exploded. Power flooded through Goku's body with surgical precision, not the chaotic surge he'd expected, but a controlled doubling of his strength that felt as natural as breathing. His muscles didn't strain. Instead, they hummed with efficient energy. Raditz's scouter began beeping more rapidly. 1500, interesting, but still, Goku was already moving. His enhanced speed allowed him to intercept Raditz's grab for Gohan, catching his brother's wrist with both hands. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground. "Stay away from my son," Goku growled, his voice steady despite the incredible energy flowing through him. For the first time, Raditz looked surprised. His scouter registered the stable 16-0 reading with mechanical precision. "A battle surge? On Earth? How did a low-class warrior learn?" "Daddy!" Gohan's terrified scream shattered Goku's control. This time, the power didn't double. It exploded, energy erupted from Goku's core in a violent cascade, his power level rocketing skyward without restraint or discipline. The surge was everything the controlled boost hadn't been: wild, destructive, magnificent. His muscles screamed as they tried to channel energy meant for bodies far stronger than his. Raditz's scouter sparked, its display flickering between garbled readings before the screen went dark completely. "What impossible? The readings!" The energy pouring off Goku withered the grass in a 10-foot radius around him. Small rocks began to crack from the pressure. The air itself seemed to thicken with raw power. Raditz stumbled backward, his confident sneer replaced by something closer to alarm. Without functional scouter readings, he could only sense the overwhelming key signature that had emerged from his supposedly weak brother. This power, Raditz's hand moved to his scouter's communication device. It's beyond anything a low class should possess. I need to report this anomaly. The surge lasted exactly 15 seconds. Then Goku collapsed. The energy vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving him gasping on his hands and knees. Every muscle fiber felt like it had been torn and rebuilt. His vision blurred as his body tried to process what had just happened to it. Goku, Piccolo's voice cut through the aftermath as the Namekian landed between father and son. He'd felt the massive ki spike from across the continent and arrived to find its source barely conscious. Raditz snarled, frustrated by his malfunctioning equipment. Another one, this planet is full of surprises. His hand found the communication button on his scouter. Vegeta, Nappa priority transmission. The low class has exhibited unprecedented power fluctuations. Mission parameters may need revision. Special beam cannon. Piccolo's voice cut through the transmission as golden energy began spiraling around his extended fingers. Raditz looked up to see the charging attack, his tactical training finally overriding his confusion. Impossible. You need at least 30 seconds to charge that technique. I've been working on the speed, Piccolo replied grimly, though sweat beaded on his forehead from the rapid energy compression. Goku, if you have any strength left, now would be the time. Goku forced himself to his feet, his body still trembling from the surge backlash. The controlled boost was gone, leaving him back at his base 800 power level. But his mind was clear and his protective instincts burned brighter than ever. Gohan, get behind that rock, he ordered, then looked at Raditz. You want to see what a low-class warrior can do. Even without that power, I'll stop you. Raditz's damaged scouter couldn't give him reliable readings, but his experience told him the massive key signature was gone. Exhausted yourself with that display, did you? No matter, I'll finish this quickly and take the boy. The Saiyan rushed forward, but Goku was ready. Years of training had taught him to fight smarter, not just harder. He ducked under Raditz's first swing, using his brother's momentum to throw him off balance. Now Piccolo, special beam cannon, the spiraling energy beam lanced forward with deadly precision. Raditz, caught off guard by Goku's tactical awareness, couldn't dodge completely. The beam punched through his chest and he fell to his knees. Impossible, Raditz gasped, blood frothing at his lips. A low class, outsmarted. Elite, his hand found the scouter's communication device one final time. Vegeta, Nappa, power readings, unreliable, approach with caution. Dragon Balls confirmed. 1 year, the transmission cut off as Raditz collapsed, his scouter finally going silent. Goku stumbled to his son, pulling Gohan into a protective embrace. The boy was crying but unharmed. It's okay, Goku whispered, though his own hands were shaking. It's over. Piccolo approached cautiously, his cape billowing in the residual energy disturbance. What was that power, Goku? In 30 years, I've never sensed anything like it. I don't know, Goku admitted, looking down at his trembling hands. It just happened. When I thought he might hurt Gohan, something inside me exploded. Can you control it? Goku was quiet for a long moment, remembering the precision of the first surge versus the chaos of the second. Maybe the first time felt different controlled, but that second burst, he shuddered. I could have killed us all. Piccolo nodded grimly. Then you need training, real training. That kind of power without discipline is more dangerous than any enemy. Goku, Chi-Chi's voice carried across the clearing as she ran toward them, having finally worked up the courage to investigate the explosion. What happened? The whole house shook. Goku met Piccolo's eyes over his son's head. They both understood the weight of what had just been revealed. Somewhere in the cosmos, 2 more Saiyans had just learned that Earth held surprises beyond their calculations. And Goku had learned something far more terrifying. He possessed power that could protect everything he loved or destroy it, depending on whether he could master the tempest within his own soul. We have 1 year, Piccolo said quietly. Goku nodded, still holding his son close. Then we'd better get started. As they walked toward the house, neither warrior noticed the small crater where Goku's emotional spike had scorched the earth, or the way the withered grass formed a perfect circle around the point of impact. The evidence of his potential would remain, a reminder that some powers demanded respect above all else. In the distance, the remains of Raditz's scouter sparked once more, its final transmission already racing toward 2 figures who would soon learn that their little brother had become something unprecedented. a low-class Saiyan who might just be the most dangerous warrior in the universe. 6 months of training on King Kai's planet had transformed Goku in ways he never thought possible. The 10 times gravity wasn't just building muscle, it was teaching him to channel his explosive potential with surgical precision. Again, King Kai instructed, watching Goku's aura flicker between controlled and chaotic. Remember, the surge isn't about force, it's about focus. Goku steadied his breathing, feeling the familiar electric sensation building in his core. Instead of letting it explode outward like that day with Raditz, he guided it through specific pathways, doubling his power with mechanical precision. His base strength had grown to 15,000 during the months of training, making his controlled surge peak at 30,000. Better, King Kai nodded. How long can you maintain it? 45 seconds now, Goku replied, sweat beading on his forehead from the concentration required. The breathing technique helps, but you're afraid of losing control, King Kai finished. Smart, that emotional spike you described, 6 times your base power, that's not sustainable without serious consequences. Goku's expression darkened. It nearly killed me. And if it had gone on longer, you would have hurt your son, King Kai said gently. That fear is keeping you alive, Goku, don't lose it. Bubbles chittered excitedly, pointing at the sky. King Kai's antennae twitched as he sensed the approaching key signatures. They're here, he said grimly. 2 massive powers heading for Earth. Your training time is over. Vegeta's pod touched down in East City with calculated precision. No dramatic crater, no wasted energy. Everything about the Saiyan Prince spoke of tactical efficiency. Beside him, Nappa's larger pod had left a significantly more destructive landing site. Well, Vegeta demanded, checking his scouter readings. What did you make of Raditz's final transmission? Nappa pulled up the recorded data on his scouter's replay function. Power readings were erratic, possibly equipment malfunction, but the voice stress analysis suggests genuine fear, not tactical deception. Fear, Vegeta's voice carried cold amusement. An elite warrior afraid of a low class. Impossible. Should we proceed with standard planetary decimation protocol? Vegeta considered this, his tactical mind weighing variables. No, if Raditz was telling the truth about power fluctuations, we need intelligence first. Locate the strongest key signatures. I want to see these surprises personally before we act. Their scouters immediately began tracking energy sources across the planet. The readings were unexpected. 3 significant powers, Vegeta noted. 1 massive signature, likely the Namekian from Raditz's data. 1 moderate but climbing steadily, that must be Kakarot returning from wherever he's been training. And 1, he paused, frowning at his display, fluctuating, unstable readings. Equipment failure, Nappa suggested. On both our scouters simultaneously, Vegeta's eyes narrowed. No. There's something genuinely unusual about that 3rd signature. We investigate. Goku touched down in the wasteland outside East City just as his friends arrived. Piccolo, Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, and Chaozu spread out in a defensive formation, but Goku could see the tension in their stances. They'd trained hard during his absence, but these opponents were beyond anything they'd faced. So you're Kakarot, Vegeta said, studying his fellow Saiyan with calculating eyes. Pathetic. Barely 15,000, even after whatever training you've undergone. My name is Goku, he replied evenly, falling into a ready stance. And I won't let you hurt anyone. Vegeta's scouter beeped as it registered something. Interesting, your power level just increased. 15,500, 16,000, still climbing. Is this the anomaly Raditz reported? Goku felt the familiar surge building, controlled, disciplined, sustainable. His power doubled smoothly to 30,000, the energy flowing through his body like water through well-carved channels. 30,000, Nappa read off his scouter, genuinely surprised. A controlled power increase. How is that possible? Kaioken, Goku said simply. A technique that amplifies power temporarily, but that's not all. He deepened his breathing, pushing the surge further. Kaioken times 2, the energy doubled again, 60,000. His muscles strained but held, the months of gravity training allowing him to channel far more power than should have been possible. Vegeta's scouter cracked slightly from the energy disturbance. 60,000 from a low class. His voice carried a note Nappa had never heard before, uncertainty. Nappa, Vegeta ordered, his tactical mind already adapting, test his limits, force him to maintain that output. I want to see how long he can sustain it. The massive Saiyan grinned, launching himself forward with surprising speed. But Goku was ready. The controlled surge gave him not just power, but the clarity of mind to use it strategically. Instead of meeting Nappa's charge head-on, Goku deflected the first blow and used the larger Saiyan's momentum against him. The months with King Kai had taught him that raw power meant nothing without proper application. 43 seconds, Vegeta counted aloud, watching his scouter track Goku's energy levels. 44, interesting, the output is completely stable. Goku backflipped away from Nappa's follow-up attack, breathing carefully to maintain his surge control. Piccolo, now! The Namekian had been waiting for the signal. As Nappa turned to pursue Goku, Piccolo struck from behind with a precisely aimed energy blast. Not enough to seriously damage the Saiyan, but sufficient to throw off his timing. Teamwork, Vegeta observed with scientific detachment. They're covering for each other's limitations. Clever. 60 seconds, he continued his count. The technique should be failing soon, but Goku's power level hadn't dropped. His breathing technique, perfected under 10 times gravity, allowed him to sustain the double surge for nearly 90 seconds without significant fatigue. When he finally allowed the Kaioken to fade, dropping back to his base 15,000, he wasn't even breathing hard. Fascinating, Vegeta murmured. A low class has developed controlled power amplification. Nappa, continue the engagement. I want to see what happens when he's pushed beyond his limits. The battle continued for 20 minutes, with Goku carefully managing his surge usage while his friends provided strategic support. Each time Nappa seemed to gain the upper hand, coordinated attacks from multiple angles would force him back. This is taking too long, Nappa growled, energy beginning to gather in his palm. I'll just destroy them all at once. Wait, Vegeta commanded, but it was too late. The massive energy blast was already launched not at Goku, but at his friends. Krillin, Yamcha, and the others scrambled to dodge, but the explosion radius was too large. For the second time in his life, Goku felt that terrible electric sensation building uncontrollably in his core. No, he whispered, recognizing the feeling. Not again, but this time he was ready for it. Instead of letting the emotional spike explode outward in all directions, Goku channeled it through the pathways King Kai had taught him. The power 6 times his base level, 90,000 in total, flowed through his body with devastating efficiency. The surge lasted exactly 15 seconds. In that time, Goku moved with speed that made Nappa look stationary. A single, perfectly placed strike to the larger Saiyan's solar plexus, delivered with 90,000 units of focused power. Nappa collapsed, unconscious before he hit the ground. 90,000, Vegeta read off his cracked scouter, his voice barely above a whisper. In 15 seconds, then back to 15,000 as if nothing happened. He looked at Goku, who was breathing heavily but still standing, still in control despite channeling that enormous burst. You're not just a low class with unusual techniques, Vegeta said slowly. You're something else entirely. Goku met his gaze steadily. I'm someone who protects his friends. That's all? No, Vegeta replied, his scouter finally giving up and smoking against his face. He pulled it off, crushing it in his palm. You're a Saiyan who's learned to control power that should be impossible, and that changes everything. He looked down at the unconscious Nappa, then back at Goku and his assembled friends. The tactical situation had shifted beyond his original parameters. I'll be back, Kakarot, Vegeta said, powering up to leave. But next time I'll come with strategies designed specifically for your unique capabilities. As his pod disappeared into the sky, Goku slumped to his knees, the aftermath of the emotional spike finally hitting him. But this time he'd controlled it. This time he'd protected everyone without losing himself to the power. Goku, Piccolo approached cautiously. That last technique, it felt different from the others. It was different, Goku admitted. That was the power that almost killed me fighting Raditz. But now, he looked at his hands, still trembling slightly but under his control. Now I can use it without losing myself. Krillin helped him to his feet. Think Vegeta will really come back? Goku nodded grimly. He will, and he'll be ready for everything he saw today. He looked around at his friends, battered but alive, protected by his newfound control. We need to get stronger. All of us, because next time he won't underestimate what teamwork can do. As they helped each other home, none of them noticed Vegeta's damaged scouter components scattered across the battlefield, still sparking with residual data from the impossible power readings they'd recorded. Somewhere in space, the Saiyan Prince was already planning his return, not with overwhelming force, but with strategies designed to counter an opponent who had somehow learned to wield unlimited potential with disciplined precision. The game had changed, and Vegeta intended to win it. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Goku lay unconscious, his body recovering from the Zenkai boost triggered by his battle with the Saiyans. Dr. Brief stood beside the bed, reviewing readings that defied medical explanation. "His cellular regeneration is unprecedented," he murmured to Piccolo, who had maintained a vigil for 3 days. "It's as if his body is rebuilding itself from the ground up. Power level readings are fluctuating between 70 and 90,000. "He's adapting," Piccolo said grimly. "That emotional spike technique, his body is learning to handle it better." When Goku finally opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was the change. The electric sensation that had once threatened to tear him apart now hummed quietly in the background, manageable and controlled. "How do you feel?" Piccolo asked. Goku sat up slowly, testing his movements. "Stronger, but more than that." He clenched his fist, feeling the surge potential flowing smoothly through reinforced pathways. "I think I can sustain the controlled boost for almost 2 minutes now." "The others have been training," Piccolo informed him, "but we all know it won't be enough. When Vegeta returns, he'll be ready for everything he saw," Goku finished. "Which means I need to learn things he hasn't seen." Across the galaxy, Vegeta's pod drifted through space, its occupant deep in meditation. For the first time in his life, the Saiyan prince was questioning the fundamental assumptions of his worldview. Power level means nothing if it can fluctuate by 600% in seconds. Technique mastery trumps raw strength. Teamwork multiplies effectiveness beyond mathematical prediction. His pride, the core of his identity, felt like a liability for the first time. Pride demanded direct confrontation, overwhelming force, individual superiority. But Kakarot had won through discipline, strategy, and cooperation. "Computer," he said aloud, "display combat recordings from Earth encounter." The ship's systems projected holographic replays of the battle. Vegeta watched with analytical detachment as his assumptions were systematically destroyed. Kakarot's power increases, controlled surge 90 seconds duration, emotional spike 15 seconds maximum but devastating effectiveness. Both techniques appear learnable, trainable, improvable. He paused the recording at the moment Nappa fell. "Teamwork effectiveness, each individual fighter below my base power level. Combined tactical coordination allows engagement with opponent 4 times their individual strength, multiplicative rather than additive benefits." The mathematics were undeniable. 5 fighters at 10,000 power level, working in perfect coordination, could effectively challenge a single opponent at 50,000 through positioning, timing, and strategic energy expenditure. Implications for Saiyan combat doctrine, complete revision required. Vegeta closed his eyes, feeling something crack inside his chest, not bone, but something deeper. The certainty that had defined his existence was fragmenting. "Computer, set course for the nearest high-gravity planet. I need to think differently." 6 months later, Namek. Goku's training with Dr. Jiro's gravity machine had pushed his base power to 90,000, but more importantly, it had refined his surge control to an art form. He could now maintain controlled boosts for nearly 2 minutes. And his emotional spikes had evolved into something more tactical, precise bursts of overwhelming power that left him fatigued but functional. The Jinyu force had seemed like a significant threat until Captain Jinyu attempted his body swap technique. "Body change," Jinyu shouted, purple energy enveloping both fighters. The technique struck Goku directly, and failed catastrophically. Jinyu screamed as the surge energy in Goku's body rejected the foreign consciousness like an immune system attacking a virus. The feedback threw both fighters apart, leaving Jinyu convulsing on the ground and Goku dizzy but unharmed. "Impossible," Jinyu gasped. "The technique has never failed." "Your technique requires stable key patterns," Piccolo observed, having arrived with reinforcements. "Goku's power fluctuates too wildly for any external control to maintain coherence." It was an unexpected advantage, but one that came with disturbing implications. If Jinyu's technique couldn't handle his surge system, what did that say about the fundamental nature of his power? The real shock came when they encountered Frieza. The Galactic Emperor's base form registered at 530,000, nearly 6 times Goku's current maximum surge capability. But when Frieza began transforming in response to their coordinated attacks, his paranoia became obvious. "Form 2, Frieza announced, his body swelling with massive bulk. 1 million power level. More than enough to, Goku vanished mid-sentence. The controlled surge had boosted him to 180,000, still far below Frieza's raw power, but the transformation's mass penalty was exploitable. Frieza's new bulk made him 20% slower, and Goku's speed advantage let him land 3 strikes before the Emperor could react. Clever, Frieza hissed, already beginning another transformation. But raw speed means nothing against overwhelming force. Form 3. This time, Frieza's power jumped to nearly 2 million, but the energy overflow was immediately apparent. Beam attacks overheated after 30 seconds of sustained fire, and the unstable key shell around his form showed 2-second gaps during regeneration cycles. Coordinate strikes during his recovery windows, Goku called to his team. He's too powerful to face directly, but the transformations have exploitable flaws. For 20 minutes, they played a deadly game of tactical precision against raw power. Every time Frieza seemed to adapt to their strategy, his own paranoia would drive him to transform again, creating new weaknesses to exploit. Final form, Frieza shrieked, reaching his ultimate state. 120 million power level. I'll destroy this entire planet rather than tolerate this humiliation. Goku felt the familiar electric sensation building, not the controlled surge, but something deeper. The emotional spike that had once threatened to destroy him was evolving under pressure. Not rage, he realized, protection. The transformation began not with explosive chaos, but with golden light that seemed to burn away everything unnecessary. His hair shifted to brilliant gold, his power multiplied by 50, and suddenly he was no longer channeling surges. He was the surge, stabilized and sustained. 4.5 million base power. 13.5 million at peak output. Still not enough to match Frieza's raw strength, but combined with the tactical awareness his team had developed. Now, Goku called out as Frieza's key shell flickered during a regeneration cycle. 5 simultaneous attacks struck during the 2-second window. Not enough to defeat the Emperor, but sufficient to create an opening for escape as Namek began its death throes. As they evacuated the dying planet, Goku caught his reflection in his ship's viewport. The golden hair, the transformed state that felt as natural as breathing, this wasn't just power evolution. It was the culmination of everything he'd learned about control, responsibility, and protection. Super Saiyan, he whispered, understanding flooding through him. This is what happens when the surge becomes who you are instead of what you do. Vegeta's pod detected the massive energy signatures from Namek just before the planet exploded. His scouter hastily repaired registered readings that made his hands shake. 225 million power level fluctuations, sustained for over 30 minutes. Then, something else. Something stable. He pulled up long-range sensor data, analyzing the energy patterns with the strategic mindset he'd spent a year developing. Kakarot achieved another transformation state. Not a temporary surge, a permanent evolution. And he did it through, Vegeta's voice caught, through protecting others, not conquest, not pride, protection. For the first time in his adult life, the Prince of all Saiyans felt something other than rage or arrogance. He felt humbled. Computer, analyze tactical data from Namek encounter. Focus on transformation triggers and strategic applications. The analysis was devastating to his worldview. Kakarot hadn't achieved Super Saiyan through superior genetics or royal bloodline. He'd reached it through discipline, emotional maturity, and the kind of tactical thinking Vegeta had spent the last year learning to value. He's not just stronger, Vegeta whispered. He's better. A better strategist, a better teammate, a better Saiyan. The pride that had defined him cracked completely, leaving space for something he'd never allowed himself to feel. The desire to improve not just his power, but himself. Set course for Earth, he commanded. I have much to learn. As his ship turned toward the blue planet where his rival had achieved the legendary transformation, Vegeta began planning not for conquest, but for understanding. The Prince of all Saiyans was about to become something far more dangerous than a proud warrior. He was about to become a student. Back on Earth, Goku stood in his backyard, the golden aura flickering around him as he practiced maintaining the Super Saiyan state. Chi-Chi watched from the kitchen window, no longer startled by the light shows that had become routine. Daddy's hair is funny, Gohan laughed, running up to hug his transformed father. It is pretty weird, isn't it? Goku agreed, powering down and scooping up his son. The transformation faded, leaving his black hair and familiar, gentle expression. But something fundamental had changed. The surge system that had once threatened to tear him apart was now integrated into his very being. The power that had frightened him was becoming a tool for protection. And somewhere in space, his greatest rival was learning that true strength came not from pride, but from the humility to grow beyond what you thought possible. The next phase of their rivalry would be built not on destruction, but on the pursuit of becoming worthy of the power they possessed. The journey to Namek had taken 29 days, but for Goku, every hour in the enhanced gravity chamber was worth months of regular training. When Dr. Brief's ship finally entered Namek's atmosphere, Goku's power level had stabilized at 90,000, triple what it had been during the Saiyan battle. More importantly, his surge control had evolved beyond simple power multiplication. The controlled boosts now felt like natural extensions of his movements, flowing seamlessly between base power and enhanced states without the rigid breathing techniques he'd once required. Multiple key signatures detected, he reported to Krillin and Gohan as their ship touched down, some familiar, some massive. The first sign of trouble came from an unexpected source. Captain Ginyu, the purple-skinned warrior, struck a dramatic pose as his team surrounded the newly arrived Earthlings. "We are the Ginyu Force, elite fighting unit of Lord Frieza. Surrender the Dragon Balls and we might allow you quick deaths." Goku's scouter registered the team's power levels. Guldo at 11,500, Recoome at 40,000, Birder and G's both around 42,000, and Captain Ginyu himself at an impressive 120,000. "Gohan, Krillin, stay behind me," Goku instructed calmly. "These guys are stronger than they look, but they're making a tactical mistake." "What mistake?" Recoome laughed, cracking his knuckles. "We outnumber you 5-3. You're fighting as individuals instead of a unit," Goku replied, settling into a ready stance. "That's exploitable." The battle began with Recoome's charge, his 40,000 power level making him confident in a direct assault. But Goku's response was pure tactical precision. A controlled surge to 135,000 that lasted exactly long enough to deflect Recoome's attack into Birder's path. "What?" Birder yelped as his teammates' redirected momentum sent them both tumbling. His power level spiked to over 130,000. "Temporary enhancement," Captain Ginyu observed analytically. "Interesting technique, but ultimately limited by duration." Ginyu was partially correct. The surge had lasted only 45 seconds before Goku dropped back to base level. But those 45 seconds had been enough to disrupt the Ginyu Force's coordination completely. "Now," Goku called to his allies. Krillin and Gohan struck in perfect synchronization, not at the strongest opponents, but at Guldo, whose time-stopping abilities made him the tactical linchpin of the enemy formation. With their telekinetic controller eliminated, the remaining Ginyu Force members lost their coordination advantage. "Body change," Captain Ginyu shouted desperately, purple energy spiraling toward Goku. The technique struck directly and failed catastrophically. Jinyu's consciousness slammed into Goku's body and immediately encountered the surge system, not as a technique, but as a fundamental aspect of his key structure. The foreign mind tried to control pathways that fluctuated wildly between power levels, creating feedback loops that rejected the intrusion like an immune system attacking a virus. "Impossible!" Ginyu screamed as the technique backfired, throwing both fighters apart. "The body change has never failed. Your technique requires stable key patterns for control," Goku explained, helping the convulsing captain to his feet with surprising gentleness. "My power fluctuates too wildly for any external consciousness to maintain coherence." It was an unexpected immunity, but one that raised disturbing questions about the fundamental nature of his abilities. The real challenge came when they finally encountered Frieza. The Galactic Emperor appeared deceptively small in his first form, humanoid, composed, with a power level that registered at 530,000 on their scouters. Nearly 6 times Goku's maximum surge capability, but still within the realm of tactical possibility. "So," Frieza said conversationally, "you're the ones who have been interfering with my Dragon Ball collection." "How?" "Quaint, we're here to stop you from making your wish," Goku replied steadily. "Whatever it is you're planning, it ends here." Frieza's laugh was like crystal breaking, such confidence from insects. "Very well, let me show you the difference between us." The Emperor's power began to climb, and kept climbing. 600,000, 750,000, 900,000. "This is my first form," Frieza explained casually. "I have 3 more." Goku felt his teammates' fear, but his own response was purely analytical. 4 transformations meant 4 opportunities to exploit adaptation periods and energy fluctuations. "Piccolo, Vegeta," he called to the newly arrived reinforcements. "Standard formation. We're not trying to overpower him, we're looking for exploitable flaws." The battle that followed was unlike anything in Goku's previous experience. Every time they adapted to Frieza's current capabilities, paranoia would drive the Emperor into his next transformation. Form 2, Frieza announced, his body swelling to massive proportions. 1 million power level. The transformation was immediately exploitable. Frieza's increased mass created a 20% speed penalty that Goku's controlled surges could take advantage of. For 90 seconds at 135,000 power level, he was fast enough to land hits on the bulkier form. Annoying, Frieza hissed, already beginning his next evolution. Form 3, 2 million power level. This transformation revealed different weaknesses. The massive energy output caused Frieza's beam attacks to overheat after 30 seconds of sustained fire. Worse, the unstable key shell around his form showed visible gaps during regeneration cycles, 2-second windows of vulnerability that coordinated attacks could exploit. There, Goku called out as Frieza's shell flickered. Hit him now, 5 simultaneous attacks struck during the window. Not enough damage to seriously harm Frieza, but sufficient to enrage him beyond tactical thinking. Final form, the Emperor shrieked. I'll destroy this entire planet rather than tolerate this humiliation. Frieza's transformation into his sleek, final state brought his power to an astronomical 120 million, but it also brought something unexpected. In his paranoid rush through forms, he'd never properly adapted to the tactical coordination his opponents had developed. More importantly, the rapid transformations had left psychological scars. For the first time in his existence, Frieza was fighting from a position of fear rather than confidence. You think your little power spikes make you special, Frieza snarled, energy gathering around him. I'll show you what real power looks like. That's when Goku felt it, not the controlled surge or the emotional spike, but something deeper. The protective instinct that had driven every transformation, refined through months of discipline and tactical awareness. The change began with golden light that seemed to burn away everything unnecessary. His hair shifted to brilliant gold, his eyes became emerald fire, and his power multiplied by 50 in a stable, sustainable transformation. 4.5 million base power, surge capability reaching 13.5 million at peaks. Still not enough to match Frieza's raw output, but combined with the tactical advantages his team had developed. Super Saiyan, Vegeta breathed, his scouter smoking from the energy readings. Now, Goku called out, his new transformation providing the coordination focus his team needed. The final assault wasn't about overwhelming Frieza with power, it was about using every lesson they'd learned. Piccolo created environmental barriers to limit Frieza's movement. Vegeta provided precisely timed distractions during key shell fluctuations. Gohan and Krillin maintained pressure on the Emperor's flanks. And Goku, in his new golden state, provided the strategic leadership that turned 5 individual fighters into a weapon greater than the sum of its parts. This is impossible, Frieza screamed as coordinated attacks struck during his regeneration windows. I am the strongest in the universe. No, Goku replied calmly, his golden aura stable around him. You're the strongest individual, but we're not fighting as individuals. As Namek began its death throes, the team executed a flawless evacuation, not because they'd overpowered their opponent, but because they'd learned to fight with precision, patience, and perfect coordination. Vegeta's ship detected the massive energy signatures just before Namek exploded. His hastily repaired scouter registered readings that challenged everything he thought he knew about power. Super Saiyan, he whispered, analyzing the stable golden energy pattern. The legendary transformation, achieved not through pride or rage, but through tactical discipline and protective instinct. The data was devastating to his worldview. Kakarot hadn't reached the pinnacle of Saiyan evolution through superior genetics or royal bloodline. He'd achieved it through the systematic development of qualities Vegeta had spent his life dismissing as weakness. Computer full analysis of the Namek encounter. Focus on transformation triggers, team coordination effectiveness, and strategic applications. The results were humbling. Every assumption Vegeta had made about Saiyan superiority was wrong. Individual power meant nothing without wisdom to use it. Pride was a liability when facing coordinated opposition. And the legendary Super Saiyan transformation came not from conquest, but from the discipline to protect others. Set course for Earth, Vegeta commanded quietly. I have much to learn. As his ship turned toward the planet where his rival had achieved the impossible, the Prince of all Saiyans began planning not for conquest, but for understanding. The greatest warrior in the universe had just learned that he knew nothing about being strong. On Earth, Goku stood in his backyard as the golden transformation flickered around him. The Super Saiyan state felt as natural as breathing now, not a surge to be controlled, but a fundamental part of who he'd become. The power itself was never the problem, he realized aloud, practicing the seamless shift between normal and transformed states. It was learning to use it for the right reasons. Gohan ran up to hug his father, completely unafraid of the golden energy crackling around them both. "Your hair is still funny, Dad," Goku laughed, powering down to ruffle his son's dark hair. "Yeah, it is pretty weird." But as he looked up at the stars where his greatest rival was traveling toward Earth, Goku understood that the real battles were just beginning. He'd achieved the legendary transformation, but that was only the first step in a much larger journey. Somewhere in space, Vegeta was learning humility. On Earth, androids were being constructed. And in the depths of a laboratory, a creature was growing that would force all of them to evolve beyond anything they thought possible. The age of individual power was ending. The era of tactical evolution was about to begin. The golden energy crackling around Goku felt different from every surge he'd ever experienced. Where his controlled boosts required concentration and his emotional spikes demanded sacrifice, this transformation simply was as natural and sustainable as his normal state, but elevated beyond anything he'd thought possible. Frieza's final form trembled with 120 million units of raw power. Yet for the first time since achieving his ultimate state, the Galactic Emperor looked uncertain. "Super Saiyan," Frieza whispered, his voice carrying a note of recognition that bordered on terror. "The legendary warrior, but it's impossible. You're just a low class." "I'm someone who protects his friends," Goku interrupted calmly, his emerald eyes fixed on the tyrant. "That's all I've ever been." But even at 4.5 million base power, multiplied by 50 to 225 million, Goku understood the mathematical reality. Frieza still held advantages in raw energy output, and more critically, the Emperor's paranoid rush through transformations had revealed something tactical. He fought better when afraid, more unpredictably when cornered. "Piccolo," Goku called out without taking his eyes off Frieza. "Environmental barriers, pattern 7. Vegeta, harassment strikes on my mark. Gohan, Krillin maintain flanking pressure but stay mobile." "You think your little tactical formations matter?" Frieza snarled, energy gathering around his fingertips. "I'll destroy this entire planet before I let insects dictate the terms of battle." The massive energy blast launched toward Namek's core was intercepted not by Goku's raw power, but by Piccolo's perfectly timed barrier technique. The attack scattered harmlessly into space, but the effort revealed Frieza's critical weakness. His fear was making him waste energy on dramatic gestures instead of tactical precision. "Now," Goku called. What followed wasn't the overwhelming display of Super Saiyan dominance that legends would later describe. Instead, it was 20 minutes of the most sophisticated tactical combat any of them had ever witnessed. Goku used his golden transformation not as a sledgehammer, but as a precision instrument. His surge capabilities, now integrated into the Super Saiyan state, allowed him to spike to 337.5 million for crucial moments, while maintaining a sustainable 225 million base. But the real advantage wasn't his individual power, it was how the transformation enhanced his ability to coordinate his team. Vegeta, strike pattern Delta in 3, 2. Mark, the prince's attack came exactly as Frieza's key shell entered its regeneration cycle. Not powerful enough to damage the Emperor significantly, but precisely timed to force him into a defensive position that left him vulnerable to Piccolo's follow-up environmental manipulation. Gohan, Krillin's synchronized burst, coordinates 7-7 Alpha. Twin Destructo discs curved through the battlefield with surgical precision, not aimed at Frieza directly, but designed to limit his movement options during the 2-second window when his shell was rebuilding. "This is impossible," Frieza screamed, his composure finally cracking completely. "I am the strongest in the universe. I will not be defeated by teamwork." But he was being defeated by teamwork, not through overwhelming force, but through the systematic exploitation of every flaw his paranoid transformations had created. Form 2's mass penalty, Form 3's energy overflow, Final Form's psychological instability. "You want to see real power?" Frieza shrieked, raising both hands above his head. "I'll destroy everything. This planet, your friends, the entire system." The energy gathering in Frieza's palms was planet-killing magnitude, far beyond what even coordinated defense could deflect. But as the massive attack began to descend, Goku made a choice that defined not just the battle, but his entire philosophy of strength. Instead of meeting the attack head-on with his maximum power, He used his surge-enhanced speed to position himself between the blast and Namek's core. Not to stop it, but to redirect it. "Everyone, evacuation pattern Omega," he called out as golden energy flowed around him like liquid light. "We're getting everyone off this planet." The next 5 minutes were pure coordination perfection. While Goku's Super Saiyan power redirected Frieza's planet killer into space, his team executed a flawless evacuation of every surviving Namekian. Piccolo's environmental mastery created safe passages through the destabilizing crust. Vegeta's tactical knowledge guided refugee movements. Gohan and Krillin provided cover against Frieza's increasingly desperate attacks. "You're running," Frieza taunted as the evacuation continued. The legendary Super Saiyan fleeing from battle. "I'm saving lives," Goku replied simply, his golden aura steady as he maintained the evacuation corridor. "That's what this power is for." As the last Namekian ship cleared the planet's atmosphere, Goku allowed himself to look directly at Frieza for the first time since the evacuation began. "You could have been so much more," he said quietly. "All that power, all that potential, and you used it to create fear instead of protecting what matters." "Spare me your moralizing," Frieza snarled. "If you won't fight me seriously, then die with this worthless planet." But Goku was already moving, his team coordination protocols allowing for one final tactical maneuver. As Namek entered its death throes, 5 fighters executed a synchronized escape, not through individual power, but through the kind of precise teamwork that had defined their entire battle. The evacuation ships cleared Namek's atmosphere just as the planet exploded in a burst of light visible across 3 solar systems. In the lead vessel, Goku finally allowed his Super Saiyan transformation to fade, revealing black hair and a face marked by exhaustion but not defeat. "Is he?" Gohan asked quietly. "Frieza survived," Goku confirmed, sensing the tyrant's key signature in the planetary debris, "but he's badly injured and more importantly, he's learned something." Vegeta, monitoring long-range sensors from his own ship, understood what Goku meant. The readings from the final battle weren't just measurements of power, they were tactical data on coordination, strategy, and the effective use of controlled strength. "Kakarot achieved Super Saiyan," Vegeta reported to his ship's computer, his voice carrying something that might have been respect. But the transformation itself wasn't the victory. It was his ability to use that power as part of a larger strategy. The analysis was devastating to everything Vegeta thought he knew about strength. Individual power, royal bloodlines, genetic superiority, none of it had mattered when facing opponents who fought as a unified force. Computer project tactical scenarios based on observed coordination patterns. The results were humbling. A team of 5 fighters at 50,000 power level each, working in perfect coordination, could theoretically challenge a single opponent at 300,000 through positioning, timing, and strategic resource management. Raw power was still important, but wisdom to use it effectively was paramount. "Set course for Earth," Vegeta commanded. "I have much to learn." 3 months later, Earth. The Capsule Corp training facility hummed with activity as Goku practiced maintaining his Super Saiyan state for extended periods. The golden transformation had become as natural as breathing, but he was discovering new applications daily. "The real breakthrough," he explained to Dr. Brief, "isn't the power multiplication. It's how the transformation enhances tactical awareness and team coordination capabilities." His surge system, now integrated with Super Saiyan energy, allowed for incredibly precise power modulation. Base Super Saiyan at 225 million for sustainability, spikes to 337.5 million for critical moments, and the ability to coordinate these fluctuations with his teammates' attacks. "Dad," Gohan called from across the training room. "Uncle Piccolo says there's something approaching Earth." Goku's enhanced senses immediately locked onto the familiar key signature. Not hostile but complex, carrying layers of pride, frustration, and something that might have been humility. "Vegeta," he said simply. The Saiyan Prince's ship landed not with the dramatic, crater-creating impact of his previous arrivals, but with controlled precision that spoke to his evolving tactical mindset. When Vegeta emerged from his pod, the first thing Goku noticed was his posture. Still proud, still royal, but tempered with something new, the bearing of someone who had learned to question his assumptions. "Kakarot," Vegeta said formally, "I've come to train." The word clearly cost him significant effort to voice. "Train?" Goku asked, though his enhanced perception could already sense the changes in his rival's key structure, more controlled, more strategically oriented. "The Namek battle," Vegeta continued, his voice steady but quiet. I monitored the energy readings, your team coordination, tactical applications of power, strategic resource management. It represents a completely different approach to combat than anything I was taught. He paused, clearly struggling with concepts that challenged his fundamental worldview. I want to learn how to fight like that, how to be better than just strong. Goku smiled, the expression carrying genuine warmth despite the golden energy that still flickered occasionally around his hair. Training together sounds great, Vegeta. But you should know, it's not about individual power anymore. It's about figuring out how to use what we have to protect what matters. Vegeta nodded slowly, and for the first time in his life, the Prince of all Saiyans was ready to be a student. As the two Saiyans walked toward the training facility, neither of them noticed the small surveillance device hidden in the wreckage of Vegeta's old scouter, still transmitting data about power levels, coordination patterns, and tactical adaptations to a laboratory where Dr. Jiro was designing the next generation of threats. The age of individual warriors was ending. The era of strategic evolution had begun. And somewhere in the depths of that laboratory, something was growing that would test everything they'd learned about the difference between being powerful and being strong. The gravity chamber's hum had become the soundtrack to Vegeta's descent into madness. 300 times Earth's gravity, 400 times, 500 times. Each day, he pushed the machine beyond its safety parameters, his body breaking down and rebuilding itself in cycles that would have killed lesser beings. But the Zenkai boosts that should have made him stronger only served to highlight the impossible gap he was trying to bridge. Super Saiyan, the legendary transformation achieved through, what? Tactical discipline, protective instinct. Everything I've dismissed as weakness. Computer, display power analysis from Namek encounter. The holographic readouts painted a picture that shattered everything Vegeta thought he knew about strength. Kakarot's team coordination hadn't just multiplied their individual capabilities, it had created strategic advantages that rendered raw power differences irrelevant. Kakarot's base power, 4.5 million. Super Saiyan multiplication, 50 times base. Total output, 225 million. Vegeta's own power had stagnated at 2.8 million base despite months of brutal training. Even if he achieved Super Saiyan, which seemed increasingly unlikely, he would only reach 140 million, still inferior. But the numbers weren't what was driving him toward the breaking point. It was the tactical analysis. Team coordination effectiveness, multiplicative rather than additive. 5 fighters at 50,000 power level, perfect coordination, effective combat capability against single opponent up to 300,000. The mathematics were undeniable. Everything he'd been taught about Saiyan superiority, royal bloodlines, individual dominance, all of it was wrong. 600 times gravity. His bones cracked under the pressure, but he forced his body to continue the training kata. "I am the Prince of all Saiyans," he whispered through gritted teeth. "Elite class, royal blood, I will not be surpassed by a low-class warrior who learned to work with others, who put protection before pride, who achieved the legendary transformation through qualities Vegeta had spent his entire life rejecting." The gravity increased to 650 times normal. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. His heart struggled to pump under the crushing pressure. Computer, replay Namek battle sequence. Focus on Kakarot's tactical decision-making. He watched again as his rival chose evacuation over individual glory, coordination over dominance, strategic thinking over brute force. Every decision that had once looked like weakness now revealed itself as sophisticated tactical awareness. 700 times gravity, something snapped in Vegeta's ribcage. "Why?" he screamed at the empty chamber. "Why does everything I am mean nothing?" The breaking point came at the end of month 11. Dr. Brief found him collapsed in the gravity chamber at 800 times Earth's normal pull, far beyond what the machine was designed to handle, far beyond what any being should survive. "Vegeta!" Dr. Brief shut down the gravity system and rushed to check vital signs. The Saiyan Prince's body was a mass of internal injuries, stress fractures, and cellular damage that defied medical explanation. But he was conscious and laughing. It wasn't the laugh of madness, it was the laugh of someone who had finally, completely run out of denial. "I understand now," Vegeta whispered, his voice barely audible through damaged vocal cords. "A year of training and I haven't achieved Super Saiyan. Do you know why, Doctor?" Dr. Brief carefully administered medical nanobots while monitoring Vegeta's vital signs. "Perhaps you should rest, because I've been training to become stronger than Kakarot," Vegeta interrupted. "But strength isn't the point, it never was." He forced himself to sit up, wincing as broken ribs shifted. Kakarot didn't achieve Super Saiyan by becoming more powerful than his enemies. He achieved it by becoming worthy of that power. The words hung in the air like a confession. And I am not worthy. Not yet, Dr. Brief watched in fascination as something fundamental shifted in the Saiyan prince's demeanor. The arrogance was still there, but tempered now with something that looked like genuine humility. Doctor, I need access to your strategic analysis computers and historical data on Earth's military tactics, coordination protocols, team-based combat systems. You want to study. Teamwork? Vegeta's smile was rueful. I want to study everything I've spent my life dismissing as weakness, because apparently I've been wrong about what makes a warrior strong. The transformation took place over the following months, but it wasn't the physical evolution Vegeta had been desperately seeking. It was something far more profound. He studied Earth's military history with the same obsessive focus he'd once applied to power multiplication. Ancient phalanx formations, modern special operations tactics, coordination patterns that allowed weaker forces to defeat superior individual opponents. Fascinating, he murmured, analyzing footage of human military exercises. The principle is consistent across all effective formations. Individual capabilities matter less than systemic coordination. When the other Z fighters arrived for training sessions, Vegeta began participating not as a rival seeking to prove superiority, but as a strategist learning to think beyond personal power. Piccolo, he said during one session, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. Your environmental manipulation techniques, show me how they integrate with Kakarot's power surge timing. Piccolo raised an eyebrow but complied, demonstrating how his barrier formations could be timed to enhance rather than compete with Goku's tactical movements. In Gohan, Vegeta continued, your power fluctuation patterns during emotional stress, they're similar to Kakarot's surge system but more reactive. Has anyone taught you to control the trigger mechanisms? For 3 months, the Prince of all Saiyans learned to be something he'd never been before. A student, the breakthrough came not in the gravity chamber, but during a group training exercise where Vegeta successfully coordinated a 5-person formation that allowed Yamcha, power level 75,000, to land a clean hit on Piccolo, power level 1.2 million. Tactical coordination multiplier achieved, Vegeta noted with scientific detachment. Individual power differential overcome through strategic positioning and timing. But it was Goku's reaction that marked the real victory. That was amazing, Vegeta. I couldn't have planned that coordination sequence better myself. Genuine praise, from the warrior who had achieved Super Saiyan, for tactical thinking rather than raw power. For the first time in his adult life, Vegeta felt pride in something other than his individual strength. Kakarot, he said quietly after the training session, when the androids arrive, I want to contribute more than just additional firepower. Goku's smile was warm and genuine. I was hoping you'd say that. We're going to need every strategic advantage we can get. 3 years later, the android threat emerges when Dr. Jiro's creations finally emerged from their mountain laboratory. They faced not the collection of individual warriors the doctor had expected, but something far more dangerous. A coordinated unit that had spent 3 years learning to fight as one organism. Vegeta stood among them, no longer the proud prince seeking individual dominance, but a tactical commander who understood that true strength came from making others stronger. His power level had grown to 3.2 million base during the 3 years of coordinated training, not through mindless brutality, but through strategic development that enhanced his team coordination capabilities. Android 19, power level approximately 8 million, he reported calmly as the first mechanical opponent emerged. Android 20, similar range but with energy absorption capabilities. Formation Delta? Goku asked, settling into Super Saiyan transformation with casual ease. Modified for energy drain countermeasures, Vegeta confirmed. Piccolo, environmental barriers pattern 7. Gohan, harassment strikes on my mark. I'll coordinate positioning to prevent absorption attempts. As the battle began, Dr. Jiro's monitoring systems registered something his programming hadn't accounted for. The humans were fighting with coordination levels that made their individual power readings irrelevant. Vegeta had become exactly what he'd once dismissed as impossible, a strategist whose greatest strength was making everyone around him stronger. The Prince of all Saiyans had finally learned what it meant to be worthy of power, and in doing so, he had become something far more dangerous than he'd ever been as an individual warrior. The tactical mind that could turn 5 fighters into a weapon capable of challenging any threat. The age of prideful isolation was over. The era of coordinated excellence had begun. As Android 19 fell to their coordinated assault, Vegeta allowed himself a moment of satisfaction that had nothing to do with personal glory. He had found his strength, not in surpassing Kakarot, but in becoming someone worthy of fighting alongside him. The greatest victory of his life hadn't been achieved through superior power, but through the humility to become better than he'd ever thought possible. The morning sun cast long shadows across South City as Dr. Gero emerged from his mountain laboratory, flanked by two figures that represented the pinnacle of artificial evolution. Android 19's pale, corpulent form moved with mechanical precision, while Android 20 Dr. Gero himself, now more machine than man, surveyed the cityscape with calculating red eyes. 17 years of preparation, Gero murmured, his voice carrying electronic undertones. 17 years of analyzing their battle patterns, power fluctuations, and tactical coordination from satellite surveillance. His computer brain processed terabytes of combat data collected since the Saiyan invasion. Every surge pattern Goku had ever displayed, every coordination sequence Vegeta had developed, every technique the Z fighters had demonstrated, all of it had been cataloged, analyzed, and countered. The algorithms are complete, he continued, addressing Android 19. Adaptive learning protocols will allow real-time analysis and counter-development of their techniques. By the time this battle is over, we will know everything about their capabilities. What Dr. Gero didn't understand was that the warriors approaching his location had spent 3 years learning something far more dangerous than individual power. They had learned to evolve their tactics faster than any computer could adapt. Formation Alpha 7, Vegeta's voice came through the communication devices Dr. Brief had developed. Android 19 confirmed as energy absorption model. Android 20 showing enhanced analysis capabilities. Goku, hovering in Super Saiyan form at 225 million base power, nodded grimly. They're studying us, every technique we use gets recorded and analyzed. Then we feed them false data, Piccolo replied, his tactical mind already working. Deliberate patterns that mask our real capabilities. The battle began with what appeared to be a standard Z fighter assault. Goku engaged Android 19 directly while the others spread out in their familiar coordination pattern. To Dr. Gero's sensors, it looked exactly like the tactical formations he had observed and planned for. For the first 3 minutes, everything went according to the doctor's calculations. Android 19's energy absorption systems drained power from Goku's attacks. Android 20's analysis algorithms cataloged movement patterns, power fluctuation timing, and coordination sequences. Both androids adapted their combat protocols in real time, becoming more effective with each exchange. Fascinating, Dr. Gero observed, his electronic brain processing the data streams. Their coordination is more sophisticated than satellite surveillance indicated, but still within predicted parameters. Then Vegeta gave the signal that changed everything. Pattern deviation. Execute Omega Protocol. What happened next shattered every assumption Dr. Gero had made about predictable combat patterns. Instead of maintaining their established formation, the Z fighters began executing coordination sequences that violated every tactical principle they had demonstrated over the past 3 years. Goku's surge timing shifted to seemingly random intervals. Piccolo's environmental manipulation followed patterns that made no strategic sense. Vegeta's positioning commands appeared to actively work against their formation's effectiveness. Impossible, Dr. Gero muttered as his algorithms struggled to process the chaotic data. They're fighting inefficiently. Why would they abandon proven tactics? The answer became clear when Android 19 attempted to absorb what he calculated would be Goku's maximum power surge, only to drain a deliberately weakened energy output that left the android systems confused about Goku's actual capabilities. Data corruption detected, Android 19 reported in his mechanical voice. Energy absorption readings inconsistent with previous analysis. Because we've been feeding you garbage, Goku explained, his Super Saiyan aura suddenly stabilizing at a power level 40% higher than anything the androids had recorded. Every mistake you just cataloged was deliberate misinformation. Dr. Gero's electronic mind reeled as he realized the implications. They knew we were observing. They've been preparing counter-surveillance tactics for years. Formation Delta 9, Vegeta commanded, and suddenly the chaotic fighting patterns snapped into perfect coordination, but using techniques and timing sequences that existed nowhere in Dr. Gero's database. Piccolo's environmental barriers emerged from underground rather than forming in the air. Gohan's energy attacks followed curved trajectories that the android's predictive algorithms couldn't calculate. Krillin and Yamcha provided support fire from angles that violated conventional tactical doctrine, but proved devastatingly effective against opponents programmed to expect logical formations. Adaptation impossible, Android 19 reported with something that might have been panic in his electronic voice. Combat patterns outside all recorded parameters. That's because we've been developing these techniques in isolation chambers for 6 months, Vegeta explained as his coordination commands turned 5 individual fighters into a single, unpredictable weapon. No satellite surveillance, no electronic monitoring, no way for your creator to study our real capabilities. The battle that followed was a masterclass in tactical evolution. Every time the androids adapted to one formation, the Z-fighters shifted to another sequence that hadn't existed in their previous fighting patterns. Dr. Jiro's algorithms, designed to learn and counter established techniques, found themselves trying to analyze abilities that violated their core assumptions about how these warriors fought. "This is impossible," Dr. Jiro snarled as Android 19 fell to a coordinated assault that used none of the power signatures or timing patterns in his database. "I studied them for 17 years. You studied our old techniques," Goku replied, powering down from Super Saiyan to demonstrate that the battle had never required his maximum output. "We spent the last 3 years developing new ones specifically to counter mechanical adaptation." Vegeta stepped forward, his bearing carrying the confidence of someone who had learned to think 3 moves ahead of his opponents. "Doctor, your androids are impressive examples of technological advancement, but they share a fundamental flaw with their creator." "What flaw?" Dr. Jiro demanded. "You assumed we would remain static while you evolved." Vegeta's smile was sharp but not cruel. "We didn't. We learned to change faster than you could adapt." As Android 20 joined his companion in defeat, Dr. Jiro's electronic brain processed the tactical data with something approaching desperation. 17 years of preparation, millions of calculations, adaptive algorithms that should have guaranteed victory, all of it rendered useless by opponents who had learned to evolve their capabilities in real time. "Emergency protocol activation," he whispered, his hand moving toward a remote device. "If the current models cannot adapt, then we must activate the models designed for unlimited evolution." "I don't think so," Piccolo said quietly, his hand already positioned to intercept whatever the doctor was reaching for. But Dr. Jiro's final act wasn't activating a weapon, it was transmitting a data burst to his laboratory. Every second of combat footage, every tactical analysis, every example of the Z-fighters' evolved coordination abilities. "You may have defeated us," he said as his systems finally shut down, "but you've also provided the perfect opponent with everything needed to surpass you." The transmission reached its destination just as Dr. Jiro's consciousness faded. Deep in the mountain laboratory, a creature that combined organic adaptation with mechanical precision began processing the tactical data with interest that transcended mere programming. Cell was learning. And unlike his mechanical predecessors, he wouldn't make the mistake of assuming his opponents would remain unchanged while he evolved. "Well," Goku said as they surveyed the battlefield littered with android components. "That was almost too easy." "No," Vegeta replied grimly, his tactical instincts recognizing the implications of Jiro's final transmission. "That was the preliminary examination, whatever he just sent that data to. That's going to be the real test." Piccolo nodded, his enhanced hearing having caught fragments of the doctor's final words. "Something designed for unlimited evolution. Something that can learn and adapt faster than we can develop new techniques." "Then we'd better hope," Goku said quietly, "that we've learned enough about fighting as a team to handle an opponent who can become better than all of us individually." As they prepared to investigate Dr. Jiro's laboratory, none of them realized that their greatest tactical advantage, their ability to evolve faster than their opponents could adapt, was about to face its ultimate challenge. Somewhere in the depths of that mountain facility, Cell was discovering that evolution worked both ways. The age of mechanical predictability was over. The era of bioadaptive intelligence had begun. And for the first time since achieving Super Saiyan, Goku wondered if they had learned to coordinate well enough to face an opponent who could potentially learn to coordinate with himself. The laboratory beneath Dr. Jiro's mountain complex was a testament to scientific obsession. Banks of computers hummed with decades of collected data, while organic cultivation chambers lined the walls like technological wombs. At the center of it all, one chamber stood empty, its occupant having recently achieved perfect maturity. Cell's form was deceptively elegant. Where the androids had been obviously mechanical, he appeared almost human, if humans could achieve perfect geometric proportions and possess an aura that suggested barely contained evolution. His power level registered at 900 million in his current form, but more disturbing was the sense that this was merely his baseline. "Fascinating," Cell said, his voice carrying intellectual curiosity rather than malice as he reviewed Dr. Jiro's final transmission. 17 years of tactical data, and yet they managed to evolve beyond all predictions in mere months. He replayed the android battle with scientific interest, his biocomputer mind analyzing not just the techniques, but the underlying principles that made the Z fighters' coordination so effective. Adaptive tactical evolution, real-time formation modification, counter-surveillance methodology. Cell's tail twitched with what might have been excitement. They've learned to change faster than their opponents can adapt. Intriguing, but Cell possessed something Dr. Jiro's androids had lacked: organic intuition combined with mechanical precision. Where the androids had tried to counter established patterns, Cell understood that the real challenge lay in adapting to adaptation itself. Computer analysis complete. Their coordination effectiveness stems from three factors: tactical unpredictability, formation flexibility, and, he paused, something like appreciation entering his voice, trust. They fight as a single organism because they trust each other completely. Cell's organic components processed this data with interest that transcended mere combat analysis. Trust was something no laboratory could create, no algorithm could simulate. It was the one advantage his opponents possessed that he couldn't simply evolve to match. Unless, hypothesis, if I cannot develop trust organically, perhaps I can synthesize it mechanically. Create multiple tactical approaches simultaneously, coordinate between them as they do. Cell's form began to shift, his perfect cellular structure allowing modifications that would have been impossible for purely organic or mechanical beings. Within minutes, he had developed the ability to execute 5 different combat strategies simultaneously, not through multiple bodies, but through compartmentalized consciousness that could coordinate with itself. Preliminary adaptation complete. Time to test the effectiveness of synthesized teamwork against organic coordination. The first encounter came at sunrise, when Cell emerged from the laboratory to find the Z fighters already assembled and waiting. "We felt your power level spike," Goku called out, his Super Saiyan transformation already active. "Figured we should introduce ourselves properly." Cell studied them with genuine interest. Goku at 225 million base, surge potential to 337.5 million. Vegeta at 160 million, tactical coordination abilities that multiplied effectiveness beyond raw numbers. Piccolo, Gohan, Krillin, each bringing specialized capabilities that integrated into something greater than their individual strengths. "I am Cell," he replied courteously. "Dr. Jiro's final creation, designed to be the perfect warrior. I must admit, I'm curious to test my adaptive capabilities against your teamwork." "Vegeta," Goku said quietly, not taking his eyes off Cell. "Standard formation or modified pattern theta," Vegeta interrupted. "His power signature shows multiple tactical processing centers. We're not fighting one opponent, we're fighting someone who can coordinate with himself." Cell's appreciation deepened. Even before the battle began, they were adapting their approach based on tactical analysis. "Impressive. You've learned to evolve your strategy based on enemy capabilities rather than relying on established formations." "We've learned a lot of things," Piccolo said grimly, his environmental awareness already mapping the battlefield for strategic advantages. "Question is, can you learn faster than we can change?" Cell's answer came in the form of action. He launched forward with multiple attack vectors simultaneously, not the chaotic assault of someone fighting desperately, but the coordinated precision of a team that happened to share the same body. One part of Cell engaged Goku directly, matching his Super Saiyan speed and power with mechanical efficiency. Another segment coordinated with Vegeta's defensive positioning, seemingly anticipating the Saiyan Prince's tactical commands. A third aspect focused on environmental manipulation to counter Piccolo's barrier techniques. For the first 3 minutes, Cell appeared to be winning through superior individual capability. His synthesized coordination allowed him to fight 5 opponents simultaneously while maintaining tactical coherence. Then Gohan spoke up with an observation that changed everything. "Dad, he's not actually coordinating. He's multitasking." Cell paused mid-assault, his intellectual curiosity overriding his combat programming. Explain. You're processing multiple strategies simultaneously, Gohan continued, his strategic mind analyzing Cell's approach with surprising sophistication. But you're not actually trusting those different aspects to function independently. You're micromanaging every decision. True coordination, Vegeta added, recognizing where Gohan's analysis was leading, requires letting go of individual control and trusting your teammates to make the right choices. Cell considered this, his biocomputer mind processing the implications. Synthesis versus organic development, calculated trust versus earned trust. Pattern Omega, Goku called suddenly, full trust protocol. What happened next demonstrated the fundamental difference between Cell's mechanical coordination and the Z fighters' organic teamwork. Instead of following Goku's tactical leadership, each fighter made independent decisions based on their understanding of their teammates' capabilities. Piccolo created environmental barriers without being directed, trusting that Goku would use them effectively. Vegeta positioned himself for attacks he couldn't see coming, trusting that Gohan would create the openings. Krillin provided support fire for strategies that hadn't been communicated, trusting that his teammates would be where they needed to be. Cell found himself facing something his adaptive algorithms couldn't process. 5 fighters who were thinking faster than his mechanical coordination could respond because they weren't waiting for central command decisions. Fascinating, he said as a perfectly coordinated assault drove him back for the first time. You're not fighting as a team with a leader. You're fighting as a single organism with distributed intelligence. That's what trust lets you do, Goku replied, his Super Saiyan aura stabilizing as the team's coordination reached perfect synchronization. When you know your teammates will make the right choices, you don't have to control everything. Cell's form began to shift again, his adaptive biology trying to develop true distributed consciousness rather than compartmentalized multitasking. But organic trust couldn't be synthesized in real time, and his attempts to let go of central control created coordination gaps that the Z fighters exploited ruthlessly. Hypothesis disproven, Cell admitted as another coordinated assault forced him into a defensive position. Mechanical synthesis cannot replicate organic trust development, but instead of desperation, his voice carried scientific fascination. Which means I need to try a different approach to adaptation. Cell's power level suddenly spiked to 1.8 billion as he accessed his transformation capabilities. But rather than simply becoming stronger, he was changing his fundamental approach to the battle. If I cannot synthesize your coordination, he announced as his perfect form emerged, then I will force you to fight as individuals. Cell's new strategy was as elegant as it was terrifying. Instead of trying to match their teamwork, he began targeting the trust that made their coordination possible. Energy blasts that forced teammates to choose between protecting themselves or maintaining formation. Area attacks that made mutual support impossible. Tactical situations where coordination would endanger rather than protect. He's not trying to beat us, Vegeta realized as their formations began to break down under Cell's psychological warfare. He's trying to isolate us. Pattern recognition, Cell confirmed. Your strength comes from trust-based coordination. Remove the trust, eliminate the coordination. But Cell had made one critical miscalculation. The Z fighters' trust wasn't just tactical, it was personal. 3 years of training together had created bonds that couldn't be broken by battlefield psychology. Gohan, Goku called out as Cell's latest attack threatened to separate the team permanently. Remember what we practiced in isolation training? Trust fall formation, Gohan replied immediately, understanding his father's meaning. What followed was the most dangerous coordination sequence they had ever attempted. Each fighter deliberately placed themselves in positions where only absolute trust in their teammates' capabilities could prevent disaster. Piccolo dropped his barriers, trusting Vegeta to intercept Cell's attacks. Vegeta abandoned defensive positioning, trusting Goku to cover his vulnerability. Goku allowed his power to drop to base level, trusting Gohan to provide the offensive capability needed. Cell found himself facing an opponent that violated every principle of tactical self-preservation. They were fighting not just with coordination, but with faith, something his perfect biological systems couldn't quantify or counter. Impossible, Cell said as their trust-based formation achieved 100% coordination efficiency. You're deliberately creating vulnerabilities. We're creating opportunities, Goku replied, his base-level power allowing perfect synchronization with his teammates' energy signatures. When you trust completely, weakness becomes strength. The final assault was pure coordination perfection, not overpowering Cell through superior individual strength, but rendering his adaptive capabilities irrelevant through teamwork that transcended tactical analysis. Cell fell not because he was weaker, but because he had never learned the fundamental truth about fighting together. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is trust someone else to be strong for you. As Cell lay defeated, his perfect form reverting to his base state, he looked up at his opponents with something like wonder. I evolved beyond Dr. Jiro's programming, adapted past every limitation he built into me. Achieved perfect biological coordination with myself, he said quietly, but I never learned to trust anyone else. Trust isn't something you can learn in a laboratory, Goku replied gently, offering his hand to help Cell stand. It's something you build over time with people who matter to you. Cell studied the offered hand for a long moment, then accepted the assistance with careful dignity. Perhaps. That could be my next evolution. As the sun set over the battlefield where mechanical perfection had learned the limits of individual achievement, Cell began the most challenging adaptation of his existence. Learning to trust others enough to fight beside them rather than against them. The age of perfect isolation was over. The era of imperfect but genuine cooperation had begun. And for the first time since his creation, Cell wondered if perhaps his greatest evolution might not be becoming stronger, but becoming someone worthy of others' trust. The world had known 7 years of peace since Cell's transformation from destroyer to reluctant ally. 7 years of coordinated training, tactical evolution, and the strange sight of a bioandroid learning to trust through small acts of cooperation rather than grand gestures. It was Gohan, now 18, and possessing both his father's tactical awareness and his own strategic innovations, who first detected the energy disturbance that would end that peace. Dad, he called from the Capsule Corp monitoring station, his voice carrying the calm authority he developed as the team's primary analyst. We're seeing massive key fluctuations from the southern quadrant. Some things. Waking up, Goku, now 37, and having mastered Super Saiyan 2 through disciplined evolution rather than emotional trauma, materialized beside his son via instant transmission. The readings on the screen defied conventional power analysis. It's not like Cell's bioenergy or the android's mechanical signatures, Goku observed. This feels chaotic. Like ki that doesn't follow any rules we understand. Vegeta's voice crackled through the communication system from his training facility. All units converge on coordinate 77 Alpha, unknown entity emerging. Power readings, a pause, inconsistent with standard measurement parameters. Majin Buu's awakening was less dramatic than his reputation suggested, where other enemies had emerged with declarations of conquest or displays of overwhelming force. Buu simply existed, pink, childlike, seemingly innocent, until you felt the energy radiating from his form. Buu hungry, the creature announced, his voice carrying the simple directness of a child. But the key signature surrounding him registered at levels that made their scouters malfunction. 15 billion, Piccolo read from his analyzer, frowning at the impossible number. That can't be right. No organic being can sustain that level of energy output. Unless, Cell said quietly, his perfect form having joined the gathering, the being in question operates under completely different physical principles than we understand. Cell's biocomputer mind was processing readings that challenged everything he'd learned about energy manipulation. His ki doesn't fluctuate like ours. It's constant, infinite, as if he's drawing power from somewhere beyond conventional biological limits. Goku studied their new opponent with the analytical awareness he'd developed over years of tactical evolution. He's not like anything we've faced before. This isn't about adapting to superior individual power or outsmarting mechanical coordination. Then what is it about? Vegeta asked, his strategic mind already working through formation possibilities. Chaos, Gohan said suddenly, his analytical capabilities recognizing patterns that the others were still processing. Look at his energy signature. It doesn't follow any consistent pattern. It's not that he's infinitely powerful, it's that his power doesn't operate according to rules we can predict. Buu giggled, the sound somehow more unsettling than any villainous laugh. Buu turn you into candy. Much more fun than talking. The energy beam that lanced out from Buu's antenna wasn't particularly fast or overwhelming. By the standards they were accustomed to, it should have been easily dodged. But somehow, inexplicably, it connected anyway. Krillin's form began to shift, his human structure reorganizing itself into confectionery. Impossible, Cell breathed, his adaptive biology trying to understand the mechanism of the transformation. That beam shouldn't have been able to track through his evasion pattern, because it's not following physics, Piccolo realized grimly. It's following chaos logic, rules that change based on what would be most disruptive to our expectations. Goku moved with Super Saiyan 2 speed to reverse the transformation, his ki flowing into Krillin with precise energy manipulation. The candy began to shift back to human form, and then stopped halfway. Buu magic stronger than Kai, Buu announced happily. You cannot undo what Buu does with normal power. Then we don't use normal power, Vegeta said grimly, his tactical mind shifting to strategies they developed for impossible scenarios. Formation paradox, full chaos protocol. What happened next was the culmination of 7 years of training for opponents who might not follow conventional combat rules. Instead of trying to outpower or outmaneuver Buu, they began fighting in patterns that were deliberately nonsensical. Goku attacked at angles that violated optimal positioning. Vegeta provided support fire that seemed to actively hinder their formation. Piccolo created barriers that protected Buu instead of themselves. Cell coordinated movements that appeared to work against their tactical advantages. What are you doing? Buu asked, his childlike voice carrying genuine confusion for the first time. Fighting chaos with chaos, Gohan explained as their seemingly random actions began to create unexpected results. If you operate outside normal rules, then normal tactics won't work, but neither will your chaos powers if we stop providing predictable targets. Buu's power level began to fluctuate for the first time as his chaotic nature encountered opponents who were deliberately embracing tactical randomness. Where his magic had been able to twist their organized strategies into disadvantages, their controlled chaos created situations his abilities couldn't easily manipulate. But even chaos follows patterns eventually, Cell observed, his analytical mind detecting subtle consistencies in Buu's seemingly random abilities. He may be unpredictable, but he's still operating within certain fundamental constraints. What constraints? Goku asked while maintaining their paradoxical formation. His regeneration, Cell replied, his biocomputer processing data at superhuman speeds. Watch how he recovers from damage. The chaos affects the speed and method, but the underlying mechanism requires harmonic key frequencies to maintain cellular coherence. Vegeta's eyes widened as he understood the implication. Frequency disruption if we can create enough harmonic interference. His regeneration becomes impossible, Piccolo finished. But that would require at least 4 fighters maintaining perfect synchronization while fighting chaotically. So we do both, Gohan said simply. Chaos tactics coordinated through harmonic resonance. What followed was the most sophisticated battle sequence any of them had ever attempted. They fought with apparent randomness while maintaining underlying harmonic frequencies that created interference patterns in Buu's regenerative capabilities. Goku's power surges followed mathematical sequences that seemed chaotic but generated specific frequency patterns. Vegeta's tactical commands appeared contradictory but created resonance harmonics when combined with the others' movements. Cell's adaptive responses looked like random evolution but were actually calculating precise interference wavelengths. Buu not understand, the pink creature wailed as his regeneration began to fail. Why Buu magic not working? Because chaos without pattern is just noise, Goku replied as their coordinated interference created an 8-second window where Buu's regeneration completely stopped. But harmony with purpose. That's music. The sealing technique required every ounce of coordination they had developed over 7 years of fighting together. Not overwhelming Buu with superior power, but creating harmonic frequencies so precise that his chaotic nature couldn't maintain coherence long enough to resist containment. As the Majin Buu seal solidified, the assembled fighters allowed themselves a moment of exhaustion that had nothing to do with energy expenditure. They had just faced something that operated beyond the rules of reality itself, and had won not through power or tactics, but through their ability to create order from chaos while embracing controlled randomness. That was, Vegeta began, then shook his head. I don't have words for what that was. Evolution, Cell said quietly, his perfect form showing signs of actual fatigue for the first time since his creation. Not biological or mechanical, but conceptual. We just learned to fight against the impossible by becoming impossible ourselves. Controlled paradox, Gohan added, his analytical mind already processing the implications. Fighting chaos with organized randomness, defeating infinite power through harmonic precision. Goku powered down from Super Saiyan 2, his mature face showing the kind of satisfaction that came not from victory, but from growth. We've come a long way from fighting as individuals, haven't we? They had indeed. From Goku's first uncontrolled surges to this moment of perfect coordination against an enemy that transcended normal limitations, they had evolved not just as fighters, but as something greater than the sum of their parts. So what's next? Krillin asked, fully restored to human form and apparently none the worse for his brief existence as Candy. We keep growing, Goku replied, looking up at the stars where new challenges might someday emerge. Because if we've learned anything, it's that there's always something beyond what we think is possible. And when we find it, Vegeta added with a confidence that had nothing to do with individual pride, we'll face it together. As they began the journey home, none of them noticed the small residual energy signature that Buu's ceiling had left behind, not malevolent but curious. Somewhere in the cosmos, something had observed their battle against chaos itself and found their solution. Intriguing. The age of impossible battles was ending. The era of conceptual evolution had begun. And for the first time since achieving Super Saiyan, Goku looked forward not to becoming stronger, but to discovering what lay beyond strength itself. The morning that changed everything began like any other. Goku was in his backyard, practicing the seamless flow between his various transformations. Base form to Super Saiyan 2, each transition as natural as breathing after years of disciplined evolution. But today, something felt different. A presence that made the hair on his neck stand up, not from fear, but from recognition of something fundamentally beyond his current understanding. Interesting, a voice said from behind him, casual and conversational despite the universe-shaking power signature that accompanied it. So you're the mortal who's learned to fight chaos with harmony. Goku turned to see a figure that seemed to exist in a state of perpetual almost sleep, purple skin, elaborate clothing, and eyes that held the weight of eons. But it was the aura that truly marked this visitor as something unprecedented. Divine energy, so vast it made Majin Buu's chaos look like a candle beside a star. I'm Beerus, the figure continued, settling onto the grass with casual dignity. God of Destruction for Universe 7, I've been observing your development. God of Destruction, Goku repeated, his analytical mind processing the implications while his body remained relaxed. Years of tactical training had taught him that threatening postures were counterproductive when facing unknown capabilities. My role is to maintain cosmic balance by eliminating threats to universal stability, Beerus explained, his tone carrying the casual authority of someone discussing the weather. Planets that grow too stagnant, civilizations that become too chaotic, individuals who accumulate power beyond their wisdom to use it responsibly. Goku felt his teammates' key signatures approaching, Vegeta, Piccolo, Gohan, Cell, all drawn by the massive energy signature that had appeared in their midst. But he held up a hand to indicate they should observe rather than intervene. So, Goku said carefully, "Are you here to eliminate us?" Beerus smiled, the expression somehow both friendly and terrifying. "That depends. Tell me, Goku, what do you believe is the purpose of strength?" The question carried weight that went beyond simple philosophy. Goku could sense that his answer would determine not just his fate, but potentially the fate of everyone he'd sworn to protect. "To protect what matters," he replied without hesitation. "To grow alongside others rather than beyond them, to become worthy of the power rather than just accumulating it." Beerus studied him with interest that seemed genuine rather than testing. "And when your power grows beyond your ability to control it, when your potential threatens the stability of reality itself," Goku's expression grew thoughtful, "then you learn better control. You find ways to channel that potential constructively rather than destructively. He paused, understanding beginning to dawn. You accept guidance from those who have walked that path before." "Precisely." Beerus's smile widened. "Which brings us to why I'm really here. Your surge system, your coordination abilities, your evolution beyond individual power, all of it represents something unprecedented in mortal development." He gestured, and suddenly they were elsewhere, a training dimension that felt both infinite and intimate, where the normal rules of physics seemed more like gentle suggestions. "For the next 6 months," Beerus announced, "you and your team will train under conditions that will either advance your understanding of power beyond anything you've imagined, or destroy you completely." "What kind of training?" Vegeta asked, his tactical mind already analyzing the impossible space around them. "Divine technique integration," Beerus replied. "Not achieving God-level power that would destabilize the universal order, but understanding God-level principles. Learning to fight with the kind of precision and restraint that true cosmic power demands." The training that followed redefined everything they thought they knew about combat, coordination, and the relationship between power and responsibility. Beerus didn't teach them new transformations or energy techniques. Instead, he taught them something far more dangerous, philosophy made manifest in martial arts. Ultra Instinct, he explained as Goku struggled with movements that seemed to require thinking and not thinking simultaneously, is not about speed or power. It's about perfect harmony between intention and action, between individual capability and universal necessity. The technique was maddeningly elusive. Every time Goku tried to force the state, it slipped away. But when he stopped trying to control it and simply allowed his body to move in harmony with his teammates' movements, glimpses of something extraordinary began to emerge. There, Beerus nodded approvingly as Goku's movements briefly achieved the impossible grace of Ultra Instinct. Not the transformation, that level of power would be inappropriate for a mortal, but the principles. The understanding that true strength comes from perfect balance between all aspects of combat. Vegeta's training focused on something different but equally challenging, divine tactical awareness. Learning to coordinate not just with his immediate team, but with the flow of universal energy itself. Strategy at the cosmic level, Beerus explained as Vegeta struggled with battle plans that required calculating variables across multiple dimensions. When your coordination reaches truly advanced levels, you must learn to fight in harmony with existence itself. Cell's evolution took perhaps the most surprising turn. His perfect biological adaptation was guided toward something unprecedented: the ability to synthesize divine technique understanding without achieving divine power levels. You represent the bridge between mechanical precision and organic intuition, Beerus told him. Learn to adapt not just to opponents, but to the philosophical principles that govern combat at the highest levels. Gohan's development focused on leadership that transcended tactical command. Learning to guide others not through superior knowledge, but through the kind of wisdom that helped each team member achieve their highest potential. True strategic leadership, Beerus explained, means making everyone around you stronger, not just coordinating their existing capabilities. Piccolo's training delved into environmental awareness that encompassed more than just battlefield manipulation. Understanding how every action in combat affected the harmony of existence itself. When your environmental control reaches advanced levels, you must consider not just tactical advantages, but the cosmic implications of every technique you employ. 6 months of divine technique training produced results that defied conventional measurement. Their power levels remained within mortal ranges. Goku's base had grown to 800 million, his Super Saiyan 3 equivalent reaching 320 billion. But their understanding of how to use that power had evolved beyond anything they'd previously imagined. The test, Beerus announced as their training period concluded, is not whether you can match divine power levels. It's whether you can demonstrate divine restraint when faced with the temptation of unlimited growth. The test came in the form of a sparring match that lasted exactly 30 minutes, not because either combatant was defeated, but because that was the precise duration needed to demonstrate every principle they had learned. Goku fought not to prove his strength, but to show his understanding of when not to use it. His Ultra Instinct principles allowed movements of impossible grace, but always in service of protection rather than dominance. Vegeta coordinated not just with his teammates, but with the flow of universal energy itself, creating strategic advantages that worked with cosmic harmony rather than against it. Cell demonstrated adaptive evolution that enhanced everyone's capabilities rather than just his own, his perfect form serving as a bridge that made the entire team stronger. Gohan's leadership created situations where each fighter could achieve their highest potential, his strategic thinking elevating everyone around him. Piccolo's environmental awareness ensured that their combat created harmony rather than destruction, every technique employed in service of universal balance. When the test concluded, Beerus nodded with satisfaction that seemed genuine rather than merely approving. "You have achieved something unprecedented," he said as they stood together in the infinite training space. Mortal beings who understand divine principles without being corrupted by divine power. "What does that mean?" Goku asked, though his enhanced understanding was already beginning to provide answers. "It means you've learned the most important lesson in all of martial arts," Beerus replied. "True strength isn't about how much power you can accumulate, it's about how much power you can choose not to use." 2 years later, Earth, the training facility at Capsule Corp, hummed with activity as the team practiced techniques that existed at the intersection of mortal capability and divine understanding. Goku moved through forms that incorporated Ultra Instinct principles without achieving the transformation itself. Vegeta coordinated strategies that worked in harmony with universal energy flows. Cell demonstrated evolution that served collective growth rather than individual advancement. "It's strange," Goku mused during a break in training, his mature face showing the kind of contentment that came from understanding rather than achievement. "All those years I thought getting stronger meant pushing beyond every limit I encountered. And now," Gohan asked, his own development having reached a point where strategic wisdom outweighed raw power considerations. "Now I understand that real strength means knowing which limits to respect," Goku replied, looking up at stars that no longer seemed like challenges to overcome, but rather like partners in the dance of existence. Vegeta nodded, his evolution from prideful prince to wise strategist finally complete. "The strongest thing we ever learned wasn't a new technique or transformation. It was humility. Divine humility," Cell added, his perfect form having found peace in being a bridge rather than a destination. "Understanding that individual perfection means nothing without collective harmony." As they resumed their training, not to become stronger, but to become more worthy of the strength they already possessed, none of them noticed the small smile that played across Beerus's features as he observed from his distant realm. The mortal team that had learned to fight chaos with harmony had now learned to approach divinity with wisdom rather than hunger. They had achieved something that even gods sometimes struggled with. The understanding that true power came not from what you could do, but from knowing what you should do. The age of unlimited growth was over. The era of conscious restraint had begun. And in the infinite expanse of Universe 7, balance was maintained not through destruction, but through the choice of mortals who had learned to be worthy of the power they possessed. Years passed. Goku never achieved the raw power levels of the gods, but he achieved something perhaps more valuable: the wisdom to use his strength in harmony with existence itself. His surge system, once a chaotic force that threatened to destroy everything he loved, had evolved into a tool for protecting universal balance. Vegeta found his greatest victory not in surpassing his rival, but in becoming someone worthy of fighting alongside him. The Prince of all Saiyans had become something far greater, a guardian of cosmic harmony. Their story became legend, not as warriors who conquered everything in their path, but as fighters who learned that the greatest strength was knowing when not to fight at all. And in the quiet moments between battles that would never come, they trained together not to become stronger, but to remain worthy of the strength they had been blessed to possess. The universe was safe, not because its protectors were the most powerful beings in existence, but because they were the wisest. And perhaps in the end, that was the point. That's the story of a Goku who learned that true strength isn't about how much power you can unleash, it's about how much you choose to hold back. If you enjoyed this journey from chaos to wisdom, drop a like and let me know what you thought in the comments. There's always more Dragon Ball stories to explore. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.